All right. Well, welcome everybody to this week's Tech School. We're excited because we're going to start talking a little bit about sales, which is always an exciting topic because making money is motivating and exciting. So we're going to be, we would like to welcome everybody to today's webinar. So I'll turn the time over to Stephen and let him share a few reminders about what we're doing and introduce Bryce.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. So today we got an awesome speaker. We have Bryce. He's going to talk a little bit about sales, which is, of course, an important part of any business, especially if you're a startup, right? It's something that I know a lot of founders that we've met over the years aren't maybe as versed in sales or don't know where to start, or maybe those that are, knowing how to tackle kind of that startup environment, right? So hopefully Bryce can, we're excited for Bryce to share some knowledge and some insight and to answer people's questions, later on in the show. But in addition to that, I did want to remind everyone, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. The more interaction that we get from videos like this, the more reach that happens with this video. So it'll reach more people. Who knows, that like or that comment that you put on the video might allow it to reach a startup or an entrepreneur that really needed to hear something in this video, right? So if you have a chance to kind of interact with it anyway, feel free to do so. But I'll hand it over to Bryce and let him get started.
Yeah, thank you everybody for having me on here, and for everybody just watching on the YouTube live. Hey. So I appreciate, again, having me on here, and I'd love to kind of share a little bit about myself, and then I can kind of jump into the topic for today. So I'm originally from Orange County, California, and went to Fountain Valley High School. Almost failed out about 3 times. Almost got kicked out about another 2 times. And then when I got out, I ended up joining the military. If you're failing out of high school, you might as well go there. They'll get you straight. So I went to the military, joined the Navy. When I got out, I was working with a couple companies doing some sales, and I've been in sales since I was about 15 years old, anywhere from knocking on people's doors, scheduling estimates to go paint their houses, all the way up to technology sales. After getting out, I had one of my friends from the military reach out to me and asked me to help him on one of his ventures. And, here I am now 2 years later with my dog in the background, working for being the co-founder and chief strategy officer over here at Harness. Sorry about that. So what Harness is it's a support intelligence platform for engaging, supporting, and tracking and advancing innovation communities. And so working with different universities and innovation centers, nonprofit and for-profit, to support them in the best way possible utilizing technology. So let me share my screen and I can kind of go straight into my my topic. All right, so I hope, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, perfect. So as you see here, the topic is getting your first 10 paying clients. It is very difficult at the start, but I believe that everybody can do it. The way this is, again, I don't know everything. I know what I've learned from failing a ton of times, from my mentors, but this may not be applicable to everybody. But I tried to make it as broad as possible so that it can hit every niche of different types of market. For us at Harness, we're more of a B2B2C. So we're selling into and licensing out our platform to universities and innovation ecosystems, and then bringing on end users. So we do have that kind of twofold aspect of selling. But this is going to be more geared towards the initial sell. So let's see. Okay, perfect. So I wanted to keep it short and sweet. We're going to be going over 4 things that are key contributors for your first 10 sales. Is going to be your product, your team, your process, and your persistence. So for your product, what is extremely important for your product, especially on early stages and trying to bring on, new clients, is, do you have an MVP? And the reason why that's important is because that is going to showcase at least one feature that's going to solve at least one problem with that client. And that's what you're going to need to be starting to leverage, is that one piece of your product that'll be able to solve something for them, so that you can kind of get over that next barrier. Also, it's just allowing you to kind of validate some of your learnings once you do close them. Without an MVP, you're really selling something that somebody doesn't need. And so that is something that you need to be working on, is looking at, do we have an MVP? If we don't, what is the process to get there? And some of the recommendations on that is doing extensive user research, do potential client research, jump on calls with people and just ask them what their problems are and what they need fixed. The next is going to be price point. So pricing is an issue that even us today, for our company, we're always battling the pricing issue. Are we pricing it right for the product? And a good rule of thumb is you want to 10x your value from your price. So if you priced it at $10, you want to make sure that that's delivering $100 value to that client. Now, in the beginning, though, we don't know what the right price point is or what the value actually is. So you need to kind of look at it is, are you looking at a profitability or a credibility? And what I recommend in the beginning is that credibility standpoint. So you can price it at a lower standpoint because you don't have credibility, and partner up with the right institutions or potential clients to gain the credibility and let them know that they're just paying for this first stage of the MVP. The next is going to be, does your product come with an experience? So a lot of products that are at their MVP stage are not showing a ton of value to the client. And it's really hard to think that because you've worked so hard on working with the product and developing it, and you have so much passion. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that there are probably better products out there because you are so early. And so what you should definitely leverage is more so the team aspect of things. So when you're coming alongside them, you need to have a better understanding about not only what their individual problem is, but how your team can essentially be an extension of what they've already done. And I'll go into that a little bit more on the next slide. So again, the next thing is your team. That's extremely important when coming to getting your first 10 sales. So I know we're kind of, there's a lot of technology startups that are started by very technical founders, great engineers, people that are just ready to create and innovate. And unfortunately, sometimes those people are not the best salespeople. And that's okay. But what we've seen in our team, at least, is that we have a founding team that has a designer, a product person, a technology or a software engineer, and also a salesperson, which is myself. And the reason why that's important is because sales is such a long, important process when starting a company that you want somebody who has some skills and has some experience in it, and willing to share that experience. One thing I would say, though, is that with salespeople, you definitely want to get a chief sales officer, chief revenue officer, or something like that, that is extremely passionate about what you're doing. Because in the beginning, early stages, they're not going to be seeing commission. If you're a co-founder, you're probably not going to make any money for a long time. So you want to see somebody that's driven by passion opposed by a paycheck. And that'll also transpire into your interactions with the clients. I'm not going to be going into pitching so much on this. I think that's a whole nother sector, and we can kind of talk about that maybe on the Q&A. But for your team, make sure you have somebody designated for sales and sales strategy. The next is control your controllables. So I talked about this before, is your client experience versus your product experience. Something that I recognize is that we can't, as early startup companies, when you're an early startup company, we can't control their product experience fully. And that can run into some difficulties because you are probably a early stage startup with minimal features that may not be able to hit exactly what they need. And if you are doing the right user research, you'll recognize that feature dumping is terrible, and it can actually be detrimental to your company. So the product experience may not be the best, but something that you can control with these first 10 clients and making sure that you retain them is that client experience. And so your salesperson usually is going to be the same person that does all the lead gen all the way up to client success manager in their early stages. And one thing that we recommend is that you, whether it's for us, at least I can speak on that, is, we meet with our clients every 2 weeks for at least 30 minutes, just to talk about next steps in their growth, and also talk about just their experience with us and what they've done and what they would like to see. And what's good about that, it allows us to expand our past our original MVP and add more features because we're actually getting the ideas from the client, opposed to coming up to it these ideas for new features internally. And then along with that, at the end of the day, in a year when the contract's up, you may still be behind on your competitors, but you've been able to grow such an amazing experience and relationship with that person that they're sold on your team. They're no longer sold on your product, they're sold on your team. And selling your team with somebody is way stronger than selling a product to somebody, because now they feel like they're part of what you've created. The next is the process. So this one is something that I've screwed up many times. And, and this is why I think this is also important with getting your first 10 clients. So to tell you a little story, for Harness, we started off at UC Berkeley about 2 years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago. And we stayed at UC Berkeley for a very long time. We stayed there and we didn't expand outside of UC Berkeley until towards the end of last year. And during that time, I was ramping up on sales and trying to figure out best practices. And I was skilled. I was a very skilled salesperson. I've been in it for almost 10 years. I've done everything from SDR all the way up to a sales rep and been on strategic sales teams. So I'm like, oh, I know exactly how to start selling. And I was utterly wrong. And it was about 3 or 4 months of me just doing the same thing over and over again, planning out different strategic plans on how to get the first 10 clients. And, okay, like I'm going to get this many leads. I'm going to develop all these leads. And then I'm going to, from there, I'm going to do a mass email just to get ourselves out there. And then I'm going to call them right after and figure it. And I'm doing all of this stuff. And we didn't get anybody, not one person. And I made 6,000 leads. And what I recognized is that, okay, maybe this process doesn't work. And it actually got to my team, me being a co-founder, my team saying, are you in the right role? Or do we need to have somebody else on this team? Because what's most important right now is the company, especially getting your first 10 clients. And if you can't do this, then we need to have somebody else. And so in my mind is, okay, all right, let me go back to the beginning and see what works. And I just started hustling. And what I mean by hustling is that more so being creative, not doing a full sales process and planning it, because at this point you have no idea what a sales process looks like for your company until you go through it about 10 or 15 times. And that's why it's important to get your first 10 clients as quickly as possible to understand what is going to be the next process. And some recommendations in that are at the beginning is, where are you getting your leads? For your first 10 clients, you want people to believe in you, and you also want people that have some credibility. So my recommendation for you and what worked for us is leveraging your own network and your own community. And that is going to be a hustle, and you're going to have a lot of grit, because you're going to have to bother people a ton of times. And that is going to be the best way to have your first good 10 clients, because at the end of the day, you want your 10 clients to be with you your whole entire time. And the way to do that is having, whether it's, using your network or going into introductions. And also with this, it's just a smarter way to work when you have a minimal amount of time and a small amount of teams, than cold calling a ton of people. The next thing is somewhere where we utterly messed up, where, as a team of Harness, our second close took us 9 months to close. It was a 3-year contract, and it was with one of the UCs, but it took us 9 months to close. And it's because our barrier to entry with our second client was so high, and we didn't know the process very well when it comes to working with universities. And so one thing I would look at is, what does it take for your client to be launched and ready to go on whether it's a platform or a product, or if you're just selling, a cup of coffee, what is the least amount of barrier that they have to go through? Some of the things are how much time is required from them. When you're an early stage startup, and this is why the customer experience is really important, is the customer doesn't always want to put in as much effort as it may be required at this standpoint, especially if you're early stage. They want to see you prove yourself and prove yourself as a company. And so that's what you'll have to be doing through your customer experience once you close them. The next is going to be contracts. We talked about pricing a little bit, but some things that I see people doing is that, I'm going to decrease the price to have a lower barrier. And I'll tell you right now, that is a mistake we made as well, is we decreased the price to have a lower barrier. But at the end of the day, if somebody wants something and you fit a need that they have, they're willing to pay. And so definitely work with some pricing. And if you do have to lower it, definitely do so, but it require a longer contract with them, just so you can still get some sort of revenue. It may not be a profit, but get more of what they're offering. And then the next is payments. Obviously, there's Stripe, there's different programs out there. You have to see what works best with that client, at least in our industry. But if you're selling, directly to end users, it's a little bit easier. But when it comes to B2B, businesses usually go through a procurement process that takes a really long time. So trying to work with them on that standpoint, having all your documents ready. So your insurance documents, if there's certain security requirements, stuff like that, try to have all of that ready to go, because it is a long process for B2B. And the last thing is persistence. So I really like these statistics, because it just is something that I think early stage startups really need to look forward to, which is sales, how hard sales is, and what are the actual, what do you actually need to do to succeed? And so as you see here, 48% of people never follow up after the first outreach, 25% stop after the second, 12% stop after the third, 10% go 3 or more contacts. But then once you look at, who's closing, sales are made, 80% of sales are made after the 5th to 12th contact. And I'll tell you right now, that is completely true even in the startup world. It may even take 15, 20 contacts. And the kind of the way that you want to do this is look at what works for you as a salesperson for an early stage startup. Sometimes you're wearing a lot of hats. If you're in an early stage startup, you are wearing a lot of hats. And so what I really like doing is kind of organizing my week in a way of saying, okay, I'm going to be doing, Monday and Tuesday, I will be reaching out to new people within my network. Wednesday, I'm going to be reaching out to people outside of my network. Thursday and Friday, I'm going to just strictly do follow-ups. or whatever works with your schedule. And the reason why I say schedule it is because persistence is a lot easier when it's organized. When it's not organized and it's not methodical, it starts being very draining, and you start getting burnout, and your mental health starts decreasing. And anybody who's in a startup needs to recognize that mental health is extremely important. But that being said, persistence is probably the most important thing out of anything within sales. Getting your first 10 clients, and even getting your 10 to 20, 30 to 40 clients, or 100 or 200, whatever it is. Persistence is key. These data points don't lie. From my experience, it's been about 3 to 5, and I'll get a close. But I've also had 12 to 15, like I said. But yeah, I know that was kind of short and sweet, but I want to leave this open to any questions that people may have. And kind of leave it open for people.
Yeah, that was great. I think we have a question from maybe that might be Joanna. You want to just unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Joanna.
Hi, that was great. I took so many notes. I am wondering, how do you track how many touch points, how many contacts you're having? Have you been disciplined about every time you're starting to interact with someone, you're keeping some kind of log of I touched this person 5 times?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of CRMs out there that can help you. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, I was absolutely terrible with it. And my whole entire sales career, I've been absolutely terrible with that. But once you're running a whole sales team, and obviously in a startup, you need to be very organized, or as organized as you can be. It really depends on what CRM works for you. So I use Streak. It's a startup company. It integrates with my Gmail, and you can build out exactly, how many touch points, how many meetings you've had. You can also schedule follow-ups that go into your calendar. So I just use kind of a CRM system. I've tested out a few others. It really depends on how much you want to work at it. And
That makes sense. That's what we're doing too. I was curious if you had some other mechanism.
No. Yeah, cheap option. Cheap option's my recommendation on that.
Yeah, of course. It's great. You had a really startup focused view on sales, and it was I think just so rich with content.
Thank you. And then we have another question. With limited time, how do you recommend qualifying prospects? So I do it non-traditionally. Again, when you're going B2B, it's a little bit different because it's a longer sales cycle. You do have to build the rapport with people. So when you're coming on that, my recommendation is, first off, just meet with the person and have a conversation. Do not sell to them. And if you go into the mindset of saying, I want to sell my product, you're already wrong. Go into it saying, I want to learn who this person is. I don't know enough about my industry because I also only have, 3 sales, 4 sales. And this person knows a lot about their industry because they're in it. So I take that method. It takes a lot longer, and that's truth. That's just the truth. I've tried the limited time aspects. So sending out mass emails to, 4, 6, 7,000 people. And I've gotten 2 responses out of all of that. And it took me 3 weeks to source all those leads. So I recommend take your time with conversing with people. At least in the B2B world.
Got another question in there too, Bryce from Lois.
What are some tips on how to turn a maybe or a no into a yes? I mean, it depends on obviously your your industry. But it really actually, what's important is not the no or the yes. It's what conversation was before all of that to get to the no or yes. So what did you do in the beginning that made them say no or yes? And so kind of reverting back, you want to see in the beginning of their pitch, ask them, what is important to you for our product, right? We go into innovation center and say, what's important to you as an innovation center? And what are you needing to do next? And so from that, you'll go through the process of conversing with them. And at the end of the day, it might be, oh, the pricing's too much, or I don't have enough money, or maybe the time constraints not heavy. And at the end of the day, what you can say is, if this is important to you, why won't you make a budget for it, right? And start leading it to that and connecting it back to, this is important. What can we do to have you make a budget or, make more time for this? Where can we look at the other parts of your life that you're spending or that you're spending your time to revert back to a yes? But again, there's a lot of objection handling opportunities, and it's really being in the conversation. And the first conversation, you don't want them to say yes or no on a product. The first conversation, you want them to say yes about you and your company, to have another meeting with them. All right.
That's great. That's Bryce, and you're doing good at this kind of multitasking. Everybody's on the chat. Usually I read them off, but you have a couple more. You have a couple more.
No problem. What are your thoughts on the transition point in the relationship building from getting to know the potential client to getting to know to a sales decision? Are you laying any groundwork for your future sales in early relationships, or just purely focused on the relationship? Awesome question. I love that one. The answer is yes. Now you're doing both. You are building the relationship because at the end of the day, if they say no, but you still have a good relationship with that person, they're going to help you make introductions. And this is where you need to be hustling and not fear nothing, is, ask them for introductions. But that being said, way I do it is I take the first call, like I said, and I don't really talk about a product too much unless they're like, all right, let's dive into this. Even when they say, let's dive into it, I try to brush that off and learn more about who they are, what they're doing, what their pain points are, and what is important to them. I'm going to keep on saying that. What is important to them? It's not important to you. It's important to them. And so transitioning to a sales decision, what I really like doing is I like thinking of different things that I've heard in my 30-minute conversation before and start linking it to different things that I know our product can fit. And the transition isn't saying, oh, I've heard all this about you and what you guys are looking for. This is how we can help. There's a middle period to that. And the middle period is digging deeper on the things that you know that you can help on. Kind of brushing off the things that you can't help on, because if you start digging into, for us, we're not a CRM, but if they're like, oh, we really want a CRM and stuff, I'm not going to touch on that anymore. I'm going to actually try to ignore that as much as possible, because that is a dark hole that I've been down a lot of times, and I've gotten a lot of no's from that. And so just look at what you can do. And then in the middle time transition part, that's when you're talking about that and digging more about that. And then almost what I like doing, say they're like, oh, I really want to look at how can I increase my jobs for my local economy through the startups at our university. It's like, okay, well, what is increasing jobs going to do for you? And ask more about that. And then you can say, more of a case study. Well, at UC Berkeley, we've created 700 jobs with startups in 2 years, and start bringing case studies at that point that fit that exact need. And the relationship's always important. Just always important. Always be building it. Even when they say no, or if they cancel the contract halfway through it, always important to keep them. Let's see. Okay, so the next question is, do you hunt for low-hanging fruit for the first 10 and just skip those that are not as excited to buy? So I think the right answer is yes. Get the low-hanging fruit, but get the credible low-hanging fruit. I'm an achiever, and I have a lot of pride when it comes to my sales. And so I try to get the people not excited. And it was an utter waste of my time. And that is what caused a lot of my conversations with my team saying, are you the right for this position? Which is a scary conversation when you're a co-founder. So what I would say is, yes, look at your low-hanging fruit, but how are you qualifying your low-hanging fruit? Is it low-hanging fruit because of, there's a new person in the role that wants to make a big initiative, or kind of look at that criteria. What I would say the lowest hanging fruit is your network and the introductions that you get. And if you don't have a great network, you better build a great network. It's very easy. Go on LinkedIn, connect with people, reach out to them. The reason why I'm here today is because I reached out to Sam Clark, and now I'm connected with everybody here, and it's amazing. I would say qualify your low-hanging fruit, and where your low-hanging fruit is coming from is important. I hope that answers that question.
Stephen, I know offhand you had some initial questions too.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Bryce. So if you're a startup, it's no secret sometimes that sometimes your product or your service is kind of changing, right? It's evolving, right? You're in that, especially if they're in that early stage as a startup. Now, from a sales perspective, I know that this could be a little different from selling a well-established product or service, right? Something that already has kind of this track record. So is there any tips in kind of a shift in approach or a shift in kind of mindset that you would use in an environment like this versus the latter? I know that you mentioned in the first part of your slides, selling your team versus the product. Is this kind of that key kind of mindset shift that you'd really need to do sales for a startup, or to kind of, I guess, get over this hump? What do you think?
And again, this is going to be all in my experience. I could be totally wrong in other industries. I would say be transparent with them. Just be honest. Be honest where you're at. If don't be throwing don't put a curtain behind the fact that you're a startup and make it seem like, oh, I have, just because I have, UC Berkeley and all this means we're a huge, massive company. It's like, no, that's not the case. And that's okay. People who don't want to work with a startup are actually not going to be great clients in the end, for your first 10 clients at least. Because they're going to have high expectations and low budget for it, which is a common issue. So yes, in selling your team, but also in being honest and saying, this is where we're at. We're consistently innovating. And something I really like doing is bringing the clients on board as part of your team as well. So for us, we have a client advisory board that we started. And you don't have to do this. You can kind of just say, hey, I want you to be speaking into our product. But what our biggest thing with that is, I want you to be able to test new features and tell me how you like them. Because again, these features aren't going to be based off of our internal team decision. It's going to be based off of our clients' decisions and what they need. Not saying that we haven't made internal decisions on product by any means, but a lot of our features are really focused on the user. And so bringing them on board with that and saying that to them in the beginning, I think is really important. And I'm just a transparent person, and I think we're a transparent company, and I think that goes a long way. Honesty definitely is the best policy when it comes to that.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's another question. We get a lot of cold messages through LinkedIn from people clearly wanting to sell something, but with no context or relationship. Could you talk more about your approach to reaching out to people that you don't know? I can reach out. I can share how I reached out to Sam. I just moved to Carlsbad. I knew nobody. I was in the middle of a pandemic. I work from home. I'm a co-founder of a startup. So that's got to be the most loneliest place you can ever be. And so my approach was, okay, well, I know my company works with higher education. I know I have a passion for it. I know I actually want to start being a guest lecturer and a teacher, later on, when hopefully, fingers crossed, when the company sells. So I know that about myself. And so what I looked at is like, okay, where are higher education? So I looked at the CSU system because that's where, I'm going to be getting my higher education again. And I looked at the community colleges because I went to a community college. So I try to find that common factor. The next thing is just seeing who the person is and seeing if you want to be in a relationship with them. And so, or want them to be, work with them. And also understanding that at the end of the day, what is most important? Is it selling your product or is it that relationship? And that's something that you got to ask yourself. And so for Sam, I think I reached out and I said, I'm new to Carlsbad. I live 10 minutes away from Cal State San Marcos. I see that you're in innovation. I see that you've also helped build out ecosystems before, which is something that I love doing. And would you be willing to just chat and just kind of talk about your experience in San Diego as an entrepreneur and the fact that you have outside knowledge of entrepreneurship ecosystems? So cater it to the person. It takes a lot longer, but it's way more worth it. Anytime I reach out to somebody, I never try to sell them right away because you don't know what you're selling, right? You can be in the largest company in the world, but you still don't know what you're selling because you don't know your person. And if they even want this. So that's, yeah.
That was great. You know what, Bryce, I know it's tech school. I'm always talking about what other tech. You said you were using maybe Streak in some ways, maybe to help you with your sales process. What other products or tech that you actually use even during your process?
Yeah. So I use Streak. I use Typeform so we have variables on our site. So we ask 6 questions to people, so make it very seamless and easy. And it manages all of our answers. And then we use Stripe for the payment process. Sometimes with universities, the directors will just pay with their card and then just get reimbursed by their universities. That's what we usually try for because it's a quicker process. But if they don't do that, then it's through, documents signed and procurement, and it's a long process. And then I also use DocuSign for just the service agreement. And then we use internal tools for, obviously for the tech side of things, for communication. We use Slack and Jira and stuff like that. But yeah, for the sales stuff, I try to keep it simple. DocuSign, Streak, and Stripe and Typeform. No need to put a bunch of other things. I'm a simple guy.
No, that's great. That's great. One other question. This is not, remember I said we have cohorts that actually are building companies, but we have kind of this cohort, even from the Cougar side, Cal State San Marcos, that are trying to build their career. What advice do you have for a young Bryce on going the sales career, especially maybe going in tech?
Well, a young Bryce wasn't an entrepreneur at all. Wasn't until somebody asked him to be an entrepreneur. So I think I would just say, I guess for me, I was coming out of the military, so I had a lot of pride and a lot of, I know things. And that just was so wrong in so many ways. I didn't know anything about the real world. But for a younger me is be okay starting, at the bottom, be okay just being a sponge of learning, and also just be okay with being creative with your sales. For instance, at House, so I'd start off as a sales development rep over at House, and I was older than everybody else pretty much in that role. I was still in college and everybody else had a degree. But I was like, okay, well, what do I know? Okay, I know that I've been in sales for a while, and I know that I don't really have a fear of trying things new. And sure enough, for the whole company, I was, month over month, top 5 SDR in the whole entire company. It's a, $6 billion company. And then I got moved up to strategic, one of their strategic sales teams, to where we started testing out new products and how to sell. And so I would just say have no fear in learning and trying something new. At the end of the day, somebody's going to say no. The next thing I would say is that don't get so caught up on how many calls you're making or how many times you're outreaching to people or how many outreaches you're doing, cold outreaches. Look at the quality. So on your calls, instead of looking at how many calls you're having, look at your call time, because that's important. And then on your cold outreaches, instead of looking at, how many did I close? How many wanted to just talk with me and said yes to a second meeting? And that's a good metric. And just be a person. We're all humans. We all should be caring about each other, and just look at people as humans. So that's what I would say for a younger Bryce.
That's great advice. I think younger Bryce would appreciate that. I love it. A little understanding. But no, thank you for that, Bryce. Also, I know offhand definitely wanted you on because you're a veteran. So thanks for your service. Regardless, we work with Bunker Lab, tons of veterans. So just thank for your service though.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let it's nice being part of we were part of Bunker Labs as well, and we originally founded by veterans, so it's nice to be supported by programs like your guys's.
Yeah, that's great. Steven, any final thoughts offhand? And I'll give it to also Sam, so you can talk a little bit about the innovation challenge and updates on that.
No, I mean the main thing is wanted to kind of thank Bryce, just to echo kind of what you said. Thank Bryce for coming on. Thank you. It was awesome to have you on. Thanks for tailoring your talk more to kind of the startup environment, right? I know we deal with startups on a daily basis. So I think as far as sales goes, I know there's a lot of support that you get, and a lot of it's kind of blanket sales statements and sales advice. And so we end up with a lot of startups wondering, how do they go about that sales product process from a startup's perspective? So I think he answered some great questions, and he gave some awesome insights. So thank you for all that. And then, the other thing, just to kind of reiterate, since we're kind of nearing the end of the episode, just to reiterate from the beginning, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, throw us a like, throw us a comment, subscribe to our channel. The more interaction that we get on videos like this, the more reach that we get, right? The more people this will reach. And so some of the questions that Bryce answered might just help an entrepreneur or startup because of, you liking a video or you throwing in a comment because you were curious kind of question, right? So don't be shy in interacting with some of our videos if you can, right? That's a great way to support us and support the community. So
thanks, Steven. Sam, you want to give me an update on the innovation challenge or what we're going to do next week?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'll say thanks to Bryce. I feel for you. My first startup, I was responsible for the sales process, sales team, business development, and building that from scratch is no small task. Like you said, it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out a process that works and is repeatable and scalable for you to grow your startup. So thanks again for sharing that. With the Innovation Challenge, we are to our top 10 finalists. So we'll be working with them over the next 10 days, preparing them for presentations to a panel of judges. So next Thursday, they'll be invited to a mentoring session. Thanks for Fokcus for helping sponsor that, and we'll be working with them to get ready for their presentation. So congratulations to the top 10, and you'll be seeing the winners announced, I think, in middle of the month, end of the month, coming up here soon. So
That's great, Sam. Thanks. And I know it's gonna be UK. It's gonna be a younger group, right? Offhand.
Did you say is it a younger group?
Yeah, you said it's a more younger group, right?
Well, the innovation we have some good submissions, and then but we're focusing again on distance learning. So it's for K through 12, and it's perfect timing as we're heading back into this fall semester, and hopefully we can help get them back onto campus safely, or if we're unable to, hopefully we can provide some ideas to help that distance learning experience be much better and more valuable to the students. So we look forward to seeing what they have.
That's great. That's good. And Bryce, what we'll do on your video too, we'll send out to make sure everyone has your LinkedIn. I see your LinkedIn here. That's great. And Bryce at joinharness.com. One offhand too, Bryce, could you just talk about Harness just a little bit? That was one piece. And you might have said it earlier, but just can you talk about Harness real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So Harness is, I said it a little bit earlier, but it's a support intelligence platform for engaging, tracking, and advancing innovation communities. We originally started off tapping into the entrepreneurship and innovation centers at universities, recognizing the siloed aspects. So there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of people with students, faculty, alumni that have either a lot of experience or want to join a startup, but yet there wasn't really one portal or one-stop shop for that. And so, and that was actually an issue that, my co-founder had, and that's why we started our company. And so what we've been doing is that we've been licensing out our white labeled solution to different universities. We just went global 2 or 3 months ago with contracts over in Africa and Saudi Arabia and Canada. But being able to now, label something for them of an innovation ecosystem portal where they can start making this economic impact by creating jobs, connecting their own innovators, and then also connecting, mentors and advice, knowledge sharing aspects. And then along with that, it is a multi-site. So now everybody that we're partnered up with has the accessibility to reach out to each other, hire from each other, and get mentors and share knowledge from each other. And now we've expanded into Alchemist Accelerator, a couple other incubators in Southern California, and now working with some other, now working with full cities and trying to drive innovation ecosystems that way.
No, that's great. That's great. All that's needed, even more so now, right? Thanks for all your work on that. I want to make sure you talk a little bit more about Harness. I know you offhand too, but thanks so much, Bryce, and Steven. I'll let you close out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bryce. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for the awesome questions, and thanks, Bryce, for speaking. That's I guess that'll conclude our latest episode of Tech School. So have a great day, guys. Take care.